Maria, you're on.
Great. Welcome, everybody. I'm so glad that you're here to join us today. A huge thank you goes out to our committee who has worked very hard on this now being, I think, our third showcase. So thank you for that. I'd also like to thank our sponsor for the Best in Show prize for this showcase, which is our winner from the last showcase, Jesse Archer, who is an ombudsman and lecturer at Cal State Long Beach. I was going to repeat to you the mission statement of our organization. Unfortunately, because of my internet issues, I had to drive away from my house to get access, but perhaps by the time the presentations conclude, I could swing back in for a conclusion. With that, I'm really excited to hear from our presenters, and I'll see you again at the end. Back to you, Donna. Thank you.
All right, and I'm gonna, Amiko, can you speak a minute about membership? Amiko is our vice president now. Thank you from San Francisco State. So I'm gonna turn it over to her, and she's gonna talk a little bit about CCGG and the membership for just a couple of minutes since we have some time.
Yeah, so we are right now sort of relaunching, all the membership structure, and then, thinking about, what could be the, the new sort of set of activities that we can start getting involved. And one of the conversations we had was the membership fees. And then, so we are starting a new membership fee structures starting January. And then that'll be a reduced membership fees. So $25 for individual members and faculty, and then older adults and emeritus faculty, and then $5, for students, annual membership fee. So if you're interested in joining us, this is a good time. I think we'll share, and we're going to be sending out, some of the email blasts to all the prospective members, including you all. And please consider, joining us, with that membership fee that we are planning to, host a number of workshops, events that we're going to be announcing in probably later in this today's event, and also, offering great networking opportunities too. Our mission is really to, have us connected, to one another, in the state of California, so that we have a really good, network, and great work, on behalf of older adults, and the work, with older adults too. So if you're interested in, I'm happy to, give you more information about it. I'll be dropping my email address, in the chat box, and so, please consider joining us, starting January.
Fantastic. Thank you, Amiko. I want to kind of, as I glance through, I want to introduce the board members that are here. So as you know, Dr. Amiko Takagi is our vice president. Dr. Suzanne Baumeister is our treasurer. I'm just going through my list here to see who's all here. Lorinda Reynolds from American River College out of Sacramento, the chair of their department, their gerontology department. We have got Mary Marshall and little baby from CSU Long Beach, Dr. Mary Marshall, Alexandra Wilkinson. Pardon me, I don't know if you're a doctor or not, but if not, you probably will be soon. And let's see who else we have here. Melina is our student representative from Cal State Fullerton. And we have Dr. Kelly Niles Yoakum, who is our immediate past president from UNLV. I'm sorry, not UNLV, University of Laverne. And I thought I saw Laura Zettel-Watson from Fullerton. There she is. So Dr. Laura Zettel-Watson from Long Beach. Okay, so let me give you a little bit of information about how things roll today.
And sorry, Karen Fazio is here from Fullerton. She's a member at large.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much. Karen Fazio from Cal State Fullerton. Thank you. So we have 6 very interesting sounding presentations today and very interesting looking presentations today. So we'll go through those presentations. The presenters will have about 10 minutes to talk about their topic and share their information. We have time for questions and answers afterwards. So you can either wait until the presentation's over to ask your questions, or you can certainly post them in the chat and we will help monitor the chat and get those questions, ask those questions to the presenter for you. We also have a little bit of time at the end at 11 o'clock to kind of stay and have an informal networking, chat with each other about presentations, about what's happening in the world of gerontology where you're at. We also have, for the presenters, at the end of the presentations, we will have a quick poll where all of you can vote on the best in showcase presentation. So as we listen to these different presentations, you will vote at the end for the one that struck you in the most meaningful way, or you just like the most. And then one of our members at large, Jesse Archer, has donated a gift card that the Best in Showcase will win. So stay tuned for that. And then we're hoping also at the end, you'll fill out a brief survey on the showcase to let us know how we can do better, keep doing better, what we're doing well, and what we can increase. So with that, I am going to turn it over to our first presenter. So Mariana, you are up first, and she is going to tell us about older adult experiences and sources of strength during the pandemic. So take it away. It's, oh my God.
It's in, they're gone.
Okay, I need to go.
I don't know why this is happening. I'm sorry.
I know it was working earlier.
And it's marked on. I have it on the first slide here. Okay. I think this time. Share.
You're in great company with technical difficulties today.
And everybody's smiling.
Yay.
Loading there.
There you go.
Hallelujah.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Well, as I said, my name is Mariana Guzardo, and I'm from CSU East Bay, assistant professor in the Department of Human Development and Women's Studies. My co-presenter is Jody Komoroshana from UConn. She'll be presenting the second half of the presentation, and Irina Todorova is also a co-author on this project and this paper. Our presentation is titled Older Adults, Experiences and Sources of Strength During the Pandemic. So just to give a little context before I start, we know that both the COVID-19 global pandemic and related lockdown measures and restrictions posed an increased threat to certain groups, including older adults. We know that older adults were more likely to get infected and most at risk of serious complications or death if infected. But restrictions like social distancing led to feeling the impact of social isolation, right? Which can affect older adults' physical well-being, mental health, and increased mortality. I don't know why it was a little slow there, sorry. Some recent research has considered the experiences of older adults during the COVID-19 pandemic, including investigating their routines and perceptions, the challenges they faced, and any stresses and joys they had during this time. But the objective of our study is to qualitatively explore the perceived challenges of older adults in the US and Puerto Rico during the first wave of the pandemic, as well as how they overcame that adversity or the challenges they faced. So we use data from a larger study developed by an international team of researchers led by Dr. Tolarova, the co-author I mentioned at the beginning. The original larger study used an online survey and convenience sampling to obtain a sample of 1,685 from 15 different countries. They were recruited between May and June 2020. The survey contains some sociodemographic close-ended questions, but also asked 3 open-ended questions to get at individuals' experiences. The questions are, what are the main difficulties you are facing and how are you dealing with them? What has the pandemic taught you about what is important and meaningful to you? What are you most looking forward to after the pandemic is over and why? So with these 3 questions, they tried to pull stories from the respondents. We selected, for this study, we selected individuals who were 60 or older from the United States and Puerto Rico samples. The mean age was 68.08 and the majority are women. And then we coded their responses. We translated the Spanish to English for the Puerto Rican stories or responses and conducted thematic analysis. The reference you have at the bottom is the information about the larger study. So we identified 3 themes. We included quotes on each slide based on respondents' texts, which we have not edited for authenticity purposes. So you might see some errors here or there. The first is on resilience through reflection and adaptation. In the context of discussing challenges such as lockdown, avoiding contagion, getting groceries, and not seeing family or friends, participants discussed how they reflected on the time they had for activities that brought peace or joy. They discussed silver linings or how they maintained a positive mindset. Also, aside from reflection and focus on what they could do, they also adapted to the new reality they were living through, changing activities, routines, and methods of communication. As an example, one participant states, I have always valued people over things, but this is more meaningful time to pray, to enjoy solitude, but also reflect on doing things differently. Technology coming to replace meetings by Zoom or Facebook Live, adapting to a new reality because things will not go to the way they were. We use a definition of resilience based on a paper by Angevar et al. 2020, in which they define resilience and which includes concepts of recovery, resistance, acceptance, anticipation, compensation, self-management, and reflection. And we also want to note that even though we see a lot of resilience through these types of concepts, manifested through these concepts, we also see feelings of fear, of uncertainty, sadness, and frustration. For example, we have a couple examples from each Puerto Rico and United States. It is very scary. Sorry, it's being covered. To feel like you're in the vulnerable group. And from the United States, I'm an older woman and I'm paranoid about getting COVID-19. So a couple examples of some more negative feelings that people had and were shared in their stories. I'm going to pass it on to Jody Oshana, who will be continuing the presentation.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I'm Jody Oshana. I am a faculty member at the University of Connecticut and collaborated with Dr. Guzzardo on this project. So our second theme that we identified from the data, we titled Contemplation and Critique of Systemic Problems and Social Injustices. So in the context of considering the different challenges and difficulties faced by the pandemic, as well as what the pandemic has taught the participants about what's important and meaningful, many participants reflected upon not only individual problems, but also broader, more systemic issues. And there were systemic concerns that were raised by both the sample from the United States and from Puerto Rico. Some of the more concrete concerns that were noted were things such as mismanagement of the pandemic by the government, concerns about the economy, and even concerns about the political climate and the influence of politics in the narrative about the pandemic. And then some of the more structural and systemic concerns that were raised were things such as need for radical social economic changes, transformation of paradigms related to the sustainability of countries, establishing public policies that are more sensitive to human needs, and addressing social inequality generated and highlighted by crises such as the pandemic. For example, one participant noted, "I'm old now, so I don't claim much from life. I receive Social Security and I am fine. However, in my country, there's a lot of poverty. And unfortunately, the government is not sensitive to the needs of that huge population, many of whom are old like me. They go hungry. Justice is the most important thing in a pandemic. Let everyone be protected equally." And another participant eloquently noted, "I have learned that these crisis situations make inequalities visible, and that in general, the government class does not attend with equity and sensitivity to the diverse needs of its citizens. Most public policy decisions are designed from the viewpoint of the power groups in order to favor themselves." Next slide. So our third and final theme is reaffirmation of values and the importance of personal relationships. Within the context of discussing the challenges that were faced during the pandemic, almost all participants discussed missing people and/or things in some context. For example, many people discussed missing human contact, especially human touch and displays of affection.
Jenny Noesis, I'm gonna help you.
Participants also recalled missing recreational and cultural activity,
No, it's Elizabeth. I'm gonna help you.
routines, and social events. It is from this contemplation of what was missed
How are you?
that the theme of reaffirmation of values emerged. One participant noted, "On a personal level, I've learned how important family and friendships are. Without those relationships, this confinement would have been unbearable." Participants also discussed at length how things they already thought were important now feel even more important. And many even commented on a realization of the importance of relationships that perhaps were previously taken for granted on some level, such as relationships with friends and family, connection with those people in their life, connection with community, and sort of appreciating the value of time. Another participant commented, "It reaffirms the importance of living consciously in the present to enjoy what I have. It revealed to me that I developed patience and serenity with age. It opened the doors to the full enjoyment of nature, the garden, the orchard. It reaffirmed my commitment to others and to follow my struggles, even if we are physically distant. It reaffirmed for me the value of time and pause." So in conclusion, we believe that our study contributes to our understanding of how older adults experience crises. Our study provides narrative insight into how the older adult population made sense of COVID-19. It also better contextualizes what we already knew from previous research, most of which was quantitative in nature. And we also think it's particularly important that we included the sample from Puerto Rico. So the inclusion of the sample from Puerto Rico is particularly interesting given the recent history of poor government response to crises in Puerto Rico, which led to most Puerto Ricans being very wary of how the government was going to handle the COVID situation. So we hope that we can use these results to inform and improve response and supports to older adults in future crises and to maximize the quality of life for older adults. Some ideas we have for future research include doing a similar study, but focusing on the following waves of the pandemic. So this study focused on that first wave of the pandemic, and there are subsequent waves. So doing a similar study in those subsequent waves, and then of course, comparing data between the waves to see how things may have changed over time. We also think it might be important to do similar studies, but focused on the influence of age, disability, or gender, or even education level, or income level. That's one limitation of our study, is that our population was very educated. So out of our 50 participants, 17 had doctorate level degrees, 11 had master's degrees, and 13 had bachelor's degrees. So 41 of the 50 had college education or higher, which we realize, makes our sample unique and perhaps not representative of the population as a whole. So we would like to repeat a similar study, but getting sort of a wider variety of backgrounds. And any questions?
Thank you. It was a very well put together presentation, and very interesting topic too. So if anybody's would like to ask a question, we can either watch the chat box or raise your hand perhaps.
I find this so interesting.
Sorry.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I don't have a particular question, but I just really enjoyed your presentation. I love that you used qualitative data. I feel like it really gives just a rich, in-depth analysis of what people are really going through during this pandemic. So thank you for using those research methods.
Yeah, it was unique to be able to use the online survey. It's the first time that I was ever involved in a study that used an online survey to get at qualitative data. And I was very worried about it when the lead person, Dr. Tolarova, was planning it all. She's like, well, this is the easiest way we have right now during the pandemic to get data. So everyone is in lockdown, right? And we wanted to get a feel for how people were feeling at the very beginning. But of course, it's limited what you will get, the information that you can get on an online survey where people are answering questions from their home on the computer versus in an interview, right?
Mm-hmm. I see a couple of questions about the survey itself. So if one of you could probably speak a little bit about, the original. I know that you had a reference, in the presentation too. But how was the survey conducted? And then was it some sort of a template questions, they used already? So can you share a little bit about that?
We used Qualtrics. That was the platform that we used. It was an informed consent, consent at the beginning of the survey. By the way, IRB, we went through IRB through the principal investigators of the larger studies university and Northeastern University. So it has IRB approval through Northeastern. We used Qualtrics, and then we shared it, as we mentioned, through convenience sampling. This questions, I believe there were like about, I said 20 questions, right? Of the close-ended sociodemographic kind of questions. We asked about whether they had been infected. Only one person responded that they thought they were infected, but they weren't sure, because remember, this is at the very beginning, so testing wasn't really in place. So no one was infected. It was more about the fear of what was going on, or just uncertainty of what was going on. Anything else that I could say about those questions? We asked about their health status, and whether their employment status had changed. Of course, many people here are retired, but some are still working. Many of those doctoral degrees are professors who answered. Since we use convenience sampling through contacts and social media, we ended up reaching a lot of people. A lot of the investigators involved in the study were sharing through their own networks, right? So that's why we have all these PhDs.
Mariana, there's a question about were the older adults all community dwelling? So one of the other questions that was asked was their living situation. And I believe they were all community dwelling. Is that correct? Or was there some all, yeah.
Yeah, there was no one in any type of long-term care facility, which would be an interesting study to do, to include people living in those kind of places.
All right, Karen, I'll give you the last question too.
Oh, okay, great, thanks. I was going to type it in the chat. I was just wondering if you observed differences or gathered data on people, between people who are single or widowed, and those who are married or in long-term partnerships, and the impact.
There was information on living situation, but we did not look at differences between those who are living alone versus with someone. I'm trying to quickly get the information I had typed up really quickly. So about half of the sample live with a partner, 16 lived alone, and 6 lived with a partner and children or parents. So the majority at 24 of the sample had a partner and 16 lived alone. We could look at differences, between those two groups to see. We haven't done that yet. That would be an interesting thing to look at.
Great, thank you very much. Let's move on to the presentation 2.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. So the next one is intergenerational service learning in the time of COVID-19 by Sarah Barrett.
Yes, hello. I will
Hi.
go ahead and share my screen here. Can everybody see that okay?
Uh-huh.
All right, great. Yeah, so thank you all for having us here today. I'm Sarah Bartlett, and I'm an adjunct lecturer in the Psychology and Child Development Department at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And I'm being joined by Allison Scholl, who is a psychology major and gerontology minor, who helped me with this project. And we're here to talk about intergenerational service learning in the time of COVID-19, and specifically a project that we did at Cal Poly called the Lives Well Lived project, and we're still doing. And this project we do in Psychology of Aging, which is an undergraduate upper division course, and it's based off of the documentary Lives Well Lived. So I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's been on PBS recently, and it has a pretty wide-reaching audience at this point. But Lives Well Lived is by Skye Bergman, and she's pictured in the purple blouse on the photo on your left there. And she also works at Cal Poly. And in the film, she interviews 40 older adults about their secrets of living a life well lived. They're all really great examples of successful aging. And so we joined together to create this project sort of centered around the film. So in the pre-COVID days, we would do this project in person, and the picture on the left is from our wrap party. So I'll just kind of explain what it looks like when we do it in person. So the first thing we do is during class time, the class meets at a retirement community in San Luis Obispo, and everyone watches Lives Well Lived together, the older adult residents that are interested in participating, and all of the students. And then we have kind of a meet and mingle time afterwards for everyone to just kind of get to know each other and start to feel comfortable. And then I will randomly pair 1 or 2 students with an older adult resident for the remainder of the quarter. We're still on quarters at Cal Poly for like 3 more years. And so they meet 3 times throughout the course of the quarter, and they interview each other using the same questions that Skye Bergman used to interview the participants in her film. And so these questions are highly relational in nature. They center around life review, as you can imagine, talking about secrets to a life well lived, regrets, successes, relationships, those sorts of things. And what's really nice is that it is bi-directional. So the older adults also get a chance to interview the students. During the course of the project, when we do it in person, there's a photo shoot with the pairs or the triads, and you'll see a couple of those photos as we go through the presentation. And then also the students produce a memoir, and the memoir is some kind of creative way of capturing the essence of the older adult's life. And it can be anything from like a nicely typed copy of the interview transcript to a digital scrapbook or a poster. We've had students write original poetry or create songs. So just some kind of way that they can leave this with the older adults. And then the fifth time that we meet is the wrap party, and the students do a presentation on what the experience meant to them. And the older adults also talk about the experience, and we just kind of, socialize and have a chance to say goodbye. So when COVID hit, obviously we couldn't do this in person. And so we decided to try doing it virtually. And so we partnered with Senior Planet, which is an online older adult technology community. And it's actually a nonprofit program through AARP. And so they already had a group of older adults that were used to being online and using Zoom. So we partnered with them. And what we did was, instead of watching the film together, everyone would stream the film on their own, and then we would have a kickoff Zoom meeting where we would put some of the older adult participants and the students in breakout groups, and they could talk about the film, kind of get to know one another. And then same thing, we matched students with older adults for 3 interviews throughout the quarter, except they were done on Zoom. And then we had a wrap party also on Zoom. And that's the picture that you can see there on the right. So this is just a little bit of the background and significance of sort of what went into forming the project, and then also the way that we're looking at some of the research that we're doing on it. And I'm not going to go over this, but it is in the slides if anyone's interested. And then just a little bit about the research that we're doing. So the original research was actually comparing the Lives Well Lived in-person project to another service learning project that I'd been doing for years. And the other project is less relational and shorter. So, I was kind of trying to see if the Lives Well Lived project was more effective. And so through some quantitative measures, I actually did find that it reduced stereotypes more and led to a greater reduction of net bias than the comparison project. But for this project, what we're doing is we're comparing the virtual version of the project to the in-person version and trying to see if the project was as effective when done online. So we did a pre-test, post-test intervention comparison group design. And Allison's going to report on some of our initial findings on the qualitative data. So I will turn it over to Allison.
Thank you, Dr. Bartlett. So our data collection consisted of pre-test and post-test surveys that were administered to undergrad students in a psychology of aging class. And the post-test survey included measures of knowledge, attitudes toward older adults, and ageism. So the 2 following open-ended statements were answered by the students. 1, please describe your experience doing the Lives Well Lived project. Indicate what you liked best about doing this project and what you liked least about doing this project. And 2, please describe any viewpoints about aging that you think changed or were reinforced as a result of doing this project. And so then Dr. Bartlett and I analyzed each student's responses using thematic analysis, a method developed by Braun and Clark. And we both coded by hand, met weekly to compare codes and to discuss discrepancies. We made decisions about whether or not we were both using the codebook correctly and adjusted our codes accordingly. Finally, codes were then tabulated to develop themes, which we later compared with themes from the in-person version of the Lives Well Lived project. Next slide, please. So our preliminary results indicated that a few of the same themes emerged from the virtual version of the project as the in-person version. Particularly themes regarding the value of intergenerational relationships, decreased fear of aging, and decreased ageism were present. A new theme also emerged from the virtual delivery of the project, and that was, despite emerging adults' ability to harness information and communication technologies with relative ease, an in-person delivery may be preferred over virtual delivery. And this may be due to the relational nature of the Lives Well Lived project. However, these findings are preliminary as the quantitative data is yet to be determined. Next slide. Finally, our preliminary qualitative analysis demonstrates that the virtual version of the Lives Well Lived project may not be preferred over the in-person version. At this point, we can only assume that these preliminary findings implicate the virtual version of the Lives Well Lived project as less effective, yet this effectiveness is pending the quantitative analysis. Dr. Bartlett and I also concluded that future research with this project should attempt to collect a larger sample size, measure the effects or benefits of this project for older adults, as the present study focused on emerging adults, and also evaluate the endurance of said effects for students. Next slide. As a conclusion, as I participated in the virtual version of the Lives Well Lived project myself, I wanted to share how this experience personally impacted me. For one, it dispelled the myth that older adults experience a loss of control over the things they're able to enjoy due to the constraints they may face. And here is a screenshot from my last meeting with my project partner, Jessica, and our senior planet counterpart, Brian. Brian is bound to a wheelchair due to neuropathy in his feet, yet he is able to find so much beauty in the world and finds joy in viewing art and reading. And this is one thing he emphasized again and again during our meetings. He advised Jessica and I to be open to awe and to see the beauty, wonder, and color in all things. And I think this really speaks to Brian's generation.
I woke up
Resiliency.
message, exclamation.
Brian's generation's resiliency in the face of stressful life changes, as well as their ability to cope and adapt to our fast-changing world. And secondly, this project allowed me to view the aging process from a much more positive perspective. Prior to meeting Brian, I had predominantly worked with older adults who suffer from various levels of dementia. And while my previous job brought me a lot of fulfillment, it also brought heartache for the patients and their families. And there's just so much uncertainty in what I was actually able to provide for these individuals. By connecting with Brian, sharing our stories, and listening to his experiences, it assured me that my work was making a difference, albeit small, in the lives of these older adults. Overall, the older adults in my life have provided me with comfort and a better sense of my purpose, and I hope I can continue to foster these beautiful relationships in the years to come. Again, thank you very much for this opportunity to share, and to you all for being here today. We can open it up to questions.
It's such a beautiful statement. Thank you. Okay, anyone who would like to ask a question? You can either watch the chat box or raise your hand.
Karen, did you have your hand up from the previous presentation, or do you have another question?
I have tons of questions. No, I'm kidding. It's from the previous. It's from the previous.
It's an
Sorry,
old.
I need to put that down.
I'm curious because we do a similar thing here at Sac State. We've since we learned about the Sky Bergman video, we've used that, and we have a group on campus called the Renaissance Society that's similar to the OLLI programs at other campuses. And so we've done that, but since the pandemic, we haven't ventured in figuring out what that might look like virtually. So I'm just curious about like some of the nuts and bolts, because I think I agree, it's just such a fabulous opportunity to get that that cross-generational learning. So could you just talk a little bit, like, did you find that everybody watched the documentary and how things like that?
Yeah, so that was one of the most challenging pieces, was where to find an older adult group to collaborate with this, because our first thought was, well, let's just reach out to the same retirement communities we've been working with and just have them do it on Zoom. But we quickly realized that people were already Zoomed out. People that had participated in person didn't really want to do it online. And so we thought, okay, we need to find a fresh group of people who want to participate. And in San Luis Obispo, we actually don't have an OLLI group. We don't have anything like that to work with. So we actually encountered Senior Planet through Sky Bergman, because she had, I think, done a screening there, was in talks with them about doing a screening for their group. So it was just sort of fortuitous that we were able to meet with them. So certainly having the filmmaker be part of the same faculty has really helped, but I know Sky is very generous about doing film screenings and, can always do that at other campuses. And there are a lot of campuses throughout the US that are using her film as kind of a launch pad for these discussions on successful aging. So I think the first piece is just, finding a group, a senior group, older adult group that's willing and able to participate in something like this. And then, just like with any service learning project, we had to get MOUs signed, and with Senior Planet being part of AARP, and, there's a little bit more red tape than just going down the street to the local retirement community. But I have to say that AARP was incredibly supportive. Senior Planet has been such a wonderful partner, and I'm really, I never would have even thought to reach out and do this virtually if it hadn't been for COVID. So it's been a great experience. Just, a little stressful at first because we were all in the midst of COVID and then trying to put all this together. But we thought we might just do it one quarter, and we just wrapped up our fourth quarter doing it. I thought I was going to be back face to face this quarter, and at the last minute when Delta was picking up steam, we pulled the plug and went back to virtual, and it's just been really fun. So.
Great. Go ahead, Emiko, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, well, we have to maybe just a minute or two. So just let's wrap up with Julie and Mariana. And then there's a question from Alexandra. So if one of you can answer that in the chat, that would be great.
Sure.
Well, I'm excited as someone who works for AARP that AARP was a good partner with you in this, but that's really not my question. My question for you is, of course, eventually the time will come when the pandemic is over. And so I'm wondering if you are planning or considering a dual track, one virtual for those who may not be able or willing to go to an in-person session, and an in-person session, and then following research that way, or have you given that any thought or consideration?
Yeah, we actually have. So, on one hand, I'm really interested to look at the quantitative data and see if the outcomes on the measures that we've collected data on are similar, because, this theme that developed qualitatively about quite a few students saying it was great, but I wish it had been in person, it kind of makes us think, but I think that's one of the things COVID has done for all of us, is make us sort of think through our processes differently. And so, yes, we have talked about continuing. And I know every time we do this project with Senior Planet, there's members that say, please keep doing it, don't stop when COVID's over. And so I think that's exactly, what our line of thought is, there might be some students that maybe are working, or who, might just want to meet somebody that lives in a different part of the country, that might have different reasons for wanting to engage in the virtual program. And as you say, like having both simultaneously. And now that we've done both projects, I think we could probably piece that together pretty easily. So yeah, it's a great idea.
Julie asked my question. That was going to ask. I also want to say it's a fabulous idea. I appreciated hearing about it. It was very interesting. I teach a health and aging class, and I'm always trying to think of service learning, or kind of something very interactive for them, where they can engage in the community with older adults. And of course, the pandemic has made things more complicated. And I can appreciate how much work probably what goes into something like this, because I've done very complicated things with my students so that they can engage in online with someone else. So it's a great project. Do you hear from older adults and I don't know if you mentioned that, do you hear from what their perspective about how they feel about their experience?
Yeah, we haven't formally studied the older adults' reactions, but we do send out like a satisfaction survey to the older adults at the end of the project and just ask for their feedback and if there's anything that they'd like to see improved. And it's been overwhelmingly positive, probably more positive amongst the older adults with the virtual version. And I don't know if part of that has to do with just being more isolated in general and being so grateful to have something like this, or I don't know, but they've been very receptive. And, you know, as I say, at the end of each wrap party, there's always like, we have our little group of like gurus that are out there trying to recruit their friends to participate for the next time. So yeah, it's been very positively received. The only, and this is just a nuts and bolts thing for everyone, the only, probably the hardest part is the time zones. Time zones, they throw everyone off. It doesn't matter whether you're 2 or 95, you know, as much as we try to get the messaging clear. We use Colorado time because Senior Planet is based out of Colorado, but we've had people in New York, California, Alaska one time, you know, people are all over. And so that was, you know, kind of one thing that we have to keep trying to work on. But overall, it's been really positive.
Great, thank you. Well, Lorena, I'm sorry. I think we're going to have to move on to the next one. So can you maybe type your question in the chat so that the presenters can follow up? All right, so let's move on to the next presentation. Pain intensity and depressive symptoms mediate the relationship between sleep quality and then postural control among middle-aged and older adults with fibromyalgia. So, Dylan?
Hi, everybody. We'll just wait for the presentation to be on the screen.
Yeah, I'm sharing the screen right now.
All right, so hello, everyone. My name is Maiva.
It's not up yet. 1 second.
Oh, sorry.
Take your time.
Can everyone see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So my name is Maiva, and I am here with Brett to present the work of Dylan Serpa, Timothy Morton, Dr. Zettel Watson, Dr. Trevitt, and Dr. Cherry. This morning, we will be discussing our project that looked at the role of pain intensity and depressive symptoms in the relationship between sleep quality and postural control among middle-aged and older adults with fibromyalgia. To begin, fibromyalgia is a chronic pain condition that affects around 2 to 5% of adults, and individuals with fibromyalgia they not only experience pain, but also other health complications, such as mood disorders like depression and sleep problems. Research shows that pain predicts depressive symptoms in fibromyalgia. Also, depressive symptoms partially account for the relationship between pain intensity and poor physical performance. Sleep quality is suggested to also play a role in predicting greater pain and poorer functional outcomes. So the goal of our study was to investigate whether pain intensity and depressive symptoms would explain the relationship between sleep quality and postural control. And we measured postural control because it is a predictor of falls, which is a leading cause of traumatic brain injury among aging adults.
And we hypothesized 2 things. First, that worse sleep quality would be associated with worse postural control performance. And second, that pain intensity and depressive symptoms will explain the association between sleep quality and postural control.
So our study consisted of 155 community residing participants that were aged between 50 and 85 years old with a mean age of 61. And most of the population were female, white, retired, married, and had some college education.
And our data was drawn from a cross-sectional study, longitudinal study from 2008 and 2018. We measured pain intensity, depressive symptoms, and sleep quality. We had the participants self-report these values. And for sleep quality, we measured restorative sleep, which is feeling refreshed and rested after waking, sleep waking, which is waking up in the middle of the night, and sleep latency, which is the amount of time it takes for a person to fall asleep. For physical performance measures, we use the Fullerton Advanced Balance, which tests static and dynamic balance, and there are 10 performance-based activities, and the participants are score a total of 0 to 40 points, and each one of the 10 items is on a 5-point ordinal scale from 0 to 4. Some of the measures include being able to reach out. Some of the tests, rather, include being able to reach out and grab like a pencil at shoulder level without needing help, or being able to close their eyes and being able to close their eyes with their feet together and basically just stay in the same position for a certain amount of time. The 8-foot up and go test is is another measure of just dynamic postural control, not static, and it tests speed, agility, and balance. And for this test, participants sit in a chair, preferably up against a wall, and there is a cone placed 8 feet in front of them, and they're instructed to stand up and walk around the cone back to their chair and sit back down, and their time is measured. For our data analysis, we used serial mediation using an asymptotic percentile bootstrapping approach. And for our results, we found that worse sleep quality led to greater pain, which led to more depressive symptoms, which led to worse postural control performance. And we found this in both using the Fullerton Advanced Balance and the 8-foot up and go test. For our study, our limitations are simply that our participants it was mostly upper class white women, and for future research, it would be better to have a more diverse sample to be able to generalize the data more. And the clinical implications of our findings are that we can now, if we have the understanding of how sleep and depressive symptoms with how sleep and depressive symptoms affect postural control, we can move towards creating changes regarding suboptimal sleep to maximize the functional outcome and slow the progress of disability and injury rates among older adults with fibromyalgia. And that is our presentation or poster.
Thank you. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand or type in your question in the chat. Lorinda?
Yeah, and I want to apologize because I was kind of distracted by asking my questions in the chat from the previous presenter. So if this was already mentioned, just let me know. So the participants in this in this pain and depression kind of study, were they? Do you have knowledge of their medication status? Were any of them on, like low dose anti-anxiety medications or antidepressants, even Tylenol as a preventive? Yeah,
I believe the full data set does include some understanding of their medication. However, that was not included in this study.
Okay.
But if I'm not mistaken, the data should be there. It's just somewhere.
Yeah, I just, having done geriatric care many years before I went to college to get my degrees, I saw how just sometimes the littlest thing could make a big difference in their pain level and their depression. So
I'll just step in. We do have medication data. We're actually compiling it right now. Unfortunately, what we don't have is dosing data. So we know what they're on, but we don't know, how much they're taking and how long they've been on it. So, yeah.
Okay, I have a question in the chat. It says, how long did your study take? So I think it's regarding, because I'm seeing that it's a first-time participants harmonized. So meaning that you took the first-time participants from all the waves?
Yes.
Okay.
So should I, basically the data was just drawn from first-time participants from the years 2008 to 2018.
Okay. And another question, did the study participants type of job they had performed throughout, were there any information about their job, I guess, the occupation?
Used in this study, there wasn't. However, I'm not entirely sure that if that was recorded in the data. That would be a question better answered by Dr. Trevitt or someone else.
I'm seeing a question about, can you give more information about the longitudinal study you used and what are the next research steps with this?
I can tell you a little bit about the study itself. So it ran from 2008 to 2018. We took measures every 2 years. And we had some participants who were with us the entire, like they came back wave after wave, whereas other participants, only came for some waves and not for others. So we can kind of look at the data cross-sectionally, but we can also look at it longitudinally for those participants who came multiple times. As far as the occupational data is concerned, I don't think we have information on that, but Dr. Zettel-Watson might correct me on that, but I'm pretty sure we don't have it.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Great, thank you very much. Any other last question that I can take? If not, appreciate your presentation, and then move on to the next presenter. Right, so the next one is barriers to home-based palliative care and recommendations for improvement by Valeria Cardenas from USC.
Hi everyone, my name is Vale Cardenas and I'm a PhD candidate at the Leonard Davis School of Gerontology. And this presentation is barriers to home-based palliative care and recommendations for improvement. So before I begin, the research in this presentation was funded through a ProCorio award and was also supported by the NIA. So the opinions and the content are solely the responsibility of the authors and do not necessarily represent the views of ProCorio or the NIA. So numerous studies have shown that palliative care decreases pain and symptom burden and improves the quality of life of both patients and caregivers and reduces hospitalizations. So according to the World Health Organization, about 40 million people are in need of palliative care. However, only about 14% receive it. And in the last decade, palliative care has expanded internationally in hospitals and in outpatient settings. But despite this growth, community and home-based palliative care remains unavailable for many seriously ill patients. And in recent years, some insurance plans have begun paying for HPPC, seemingly eliminating a financial obstacle to accessing HPPC among seriously ill patients. Yet recent reports have showed that insurance coverage for palliative care may be insufficient to expanding patient access for HPPC. So in this study, we explored barriers to palliative care from the perspective of patients and caregivers who were previously recruited and were eligible for palliative care under a randomized control trial of home-based palliative care and their recommendations for overcoming these challenges. And this randomized control trial was terminated due to our lack of ability to recruit more participants. So from October 2019 to May 2020, we conducted semi-structured interviews with 25 seriously ill patients, their proxies or caregivers. And among this sample, 15 were among the 109 who had either refused to participate in the RCT or who had refused palliative care services. And then 10 were among the 28 that we were able to enroll in the randomized control trial. We used a semi-structured protocol to elicit participants' perspectives on HPPC services. So we asked respondents to identify both positive and negative aspects of HPPC and their suggestions for improving the way HPPC was introduced to them. We also asked them if they had previously heard about palliative care and asked them for reasons why they or others might decline these services. And then all the interviews were audio taped and transcribed verbatim by a trained research assistant. And we then transferred it into a spreadsheet program. And then we used grounded theory to generate and identify 5 themes that were related to barriers to HPPC, and then 3 themes that were related to overcoming these obstacles. So in the sample, we had a total of 17 patients, and then we had 8 caregivers or proxies, and the mean age was 61. We mostly had females, whites, and people that were married or living with a partner. And then over half were college graduates. Most were retired, and patients reported an array of health conditions. And as I mentioned earlier, 10 of these participants had enrolled in the larger RCT. Moving on to the themes that we identified, there was 5 themes related to barriers to HPPC. So nearly all participants in the study mentioned that they had never heard of palliative care prior to being recruited for the RCT. So in terms of what others might think about palliative care, one patient said, because they probably never heard of it before. They're not familiar with it. I wasn't. And then sometimes they don't feel like fooling with it. And then some participants shared their misconceptions with HPPC service, expressing the mistaken belief that palliative care is only offered at end of life and it's synonymous to hospice. And then several participants believed that they were too healthy to receive palliative care and didn't understand how they qualified for palliative care. And then some participants told us that the invitation to receive palliative care came at a bad time, whether they were dealing with a lot at the time or it was too late in their disease trajectory and they felt that the recruitment call should have happened earlier. And then several mentioned the potential hesitancy of having healthcare professionals come into their homes and the added stress these visits could bring. So one patient said, there's someone that's going to come over who I don't know, and then are they going to bring more germs into their house, or do I have to clean up the house? Things like that. I felt like it was an additional burden. Moving on to the recommendations that were made to overcoming these challenges. Some participants recommended that the researchers should mention their healthcare provider during the recruitment call or have their doctor recommend their service to them. And then several recommended that we recruit through their insurance company, which is something that we did for this RCT. And they mentioned that palliative care is free of charge. So one enrolled patient shared how this strategy worked for her, saying, I made the call to the research team because the insurance company had sent me a letter asking if I would participate. And I knew it was a legitimate letter. So that's when I reached out and I called the number where you guys were from. And then participants who enrolled in the larger RCT recommended that palliative care be explained better by the healthcare providers so that patients and caregivers could fully understand the term. So one patient said, if you explain to them it's not hospice, explain to them exactly what it is. I think most people would, you would do it. You know, I couldn't understand why anybody wouldn't. And then some participants even suggested replacing the term palliative care with a different name. So in keeping with findings from previous research, our findings show that patient and caregiver lack of palliative care knowledge is a barrier to HPPC use. So only 3 of the 25 participants in this study were knowledgeable about palliative care. And I should state that all patients eligible for this study, as well as the earlier RCT, were diagnosed with either cancer, COPD, and congestive heart failure. And they had also reported significant functional decline, as well as a recent emergency room visit or hospital admission. So they qualified for insurance covered home-based palliative care, yet nearly all participants had never heard about palliative care prior to the RCT recruitment call. So in addition to their lack of palliative care knowledge, participants often assume that palliative care equates to hospice. And then several participants who qualified for but declined to participate in the RCT cited their current health condition as a reason for refusing home-based palliative care. So participants might not know that palliative care is an option early in the course of their disease trajectory. And participants were also overwhelmed by health-related matters at the time of the call. And even though palliative care can improve the quality of life of patients and caregivers, palliative care teams need to find ways to approach overburdened patients and caregivers. And then some study participants recommended that the home-based palliative care referrals and information of palliative care come from doctors and insurance providers. So during the referral process, physicians could educate patients about palliative care and discuss the reasons for referral and its timing. And this could help mitigate enrollment barriers related to lack of palliative care awareness, poor referral timing, as well as patient perception of the service need. So in conclusion, the study demonstrates that lack of awareness of palliative care among palliative care eligible patients and caregivers, and reinforces the need for additional palliative care education among seriously ill patients and their caregivers, and the importance of ensuring that a trusted source refer patients to home-based palliative care. And it also supports studies examining the need to improve messaging around palliative care services. And finally, I would like to thank all the patients and caregivers who participated in this study. And thank you very much to everyone listening. Any questions?
Thank you very much. So the article you listed, that was the publication based on the
Yes.
study?
Yes.
Great.
I find it fascinating that one of the recommendations is to change the name of palliative care. And there's so much confusion around it that that might not be a bad idea, just to be more reflective or descriptive about what it is. So that's interesting. But Julie, raise your hand and see you got a question.
Good morning, Valeria. Thank you so much for this wonderful research. And my question for you is one more for your thinking and your perceptions. If you had a magic wand, right, and can change something to help increase the amount of individuals who are both offered palliative care and receive palliative care, what would you do? You know, what would you do to help increase utilization of this vital service?
I think the first thing is that we should start with doctors, because we also conducted this study with physicians and we saw that they also lack knowledge in palliative care. So if we could start by educating medical teams to better understand what palliative care is, so that they would be able to communicate this to patients and be able to share all the benefits around palliative care with their patients.
Thank you.
It's sort of related to the question in the chat box from Sarah too. She was asking about how can we promote MDs referring to HPV more. So you would think that's the more effort to educate them.
Yes, yes. And maybe even starting with medical schools, because I think just one rotation of palliative care might not be enough.
Lorinda?
Yeah, I would kind of raise my hand and make the case that we have to stop using terminology with clients and patients that is jargon within our field, like palliative care, and coming up with another label that is friendly, that will give them a better idea of what it is based on lay knowledge, you know, the basic knowledge of a normal vocabulary of someone who hasn't gone to college, could be preventative on the side of our client, customer, patient relationships, you know, so there's like no need to educate them because the language we're using is something that they understand.
And I think it's difficult to separate ourselves from that, because even when doing a simple Google search, some hospice agencies use palliative care, but they're actually providing hospice, or some use supportive care and they're actually providing something else. So even a simple Google search confuses us also.
Yeah. I see a few suggestions of the alternative words, comfort care, supportive care.
And there has been studies done with using terms such as comfort care or supportive care that have shown to increase palliative care enrollment.
Yeah, interesting. A lot of positive comments from the participants too. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for listening.
All right, let's move on to the next presenter, titled, qualitative study on the adjustment experience of older adults relocating to assisted living. Erica?
Hello, good morning. Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes.
Let me just put it in. Good morning, everyone. My name is Erica Duarte. I will be presenting on a qualitative study on the adjustment experience of older adults relocating to assisted living. Transitions in the life of older adults are important, particularly the transitions that require leaving their homes. Although most older adults would prefer to remain at home during their late years, doing so is not always an option. In the last few decades, different forms of residential care for older adults have become the fastest growing sector of new housing. One popular choice has been assisted living, which provides long-term care services for older adults who maintain independence or minimal help. Prior researchers have focused on reasons why older adults move to assisted living or how older adults can age in place, while other researchers have highlighted the emotional aspects of a transition. However, the literature continues to lack the residential experiences of older adults, as well as the social and emotional meanings attached to these experiences. As such, the aims of the study focused on gaining perspectives on the transition experience and the coping methods used for positive adjustment. The 3 questions established were answered through the approach of using secondary data from an existing qualitative data set. New questions were drafted for this study. The research questions developed were: how do older adults describe the adjustment experience transitioning to an assisted living facility? What strategies do older adults report using to adjust? And what protective factors enable reported adjustment to an assisted living environment? The sample for this study consisted of 15 older adults residing in 6 assisted living facilities in Southern California. The age range was 65 to 88 years old, with 60% being in the 80 to 88-year-old range. 64% were female and 36% of participants were male. Of the sample, 60% have lived in assisted living under 3 years and 40% have lived in assisted living over 4 years. 74 participants were widowed, 13% married, and 13% divorced. Original uncoded transcripts from the primary study were obtained and analyzed for themes that emerged as follows. For research question 1, what was being explored is how do older adults describe the adjustment experience transitioning to an assisted living facility? Participants expressed their adjustment by describing their experiences after moving into assisted living. While some had been residing for a few years in the facility, many participants showed intact recollection by providing various details about their move. In fact, many were able to share specific memories about their experience, such as their initial feelings moving in, initial perceptions of other residents in the facility, and what it was like to organize and arrange their apartments. Participants expressed both positive and negative feelings about their adjustment, which showed transitions are not only positive or only negative experiences. Findings include adjustment encompasses both positive and negative experiences. Participants that had positive experiences were noted to be ready to move, and positive outlook was impacted by their initial interactions with other residents on their first few days. Statements shared by participants were, "I was eager to get into independent living," and "I'm glad good places like this exist." On the other hand, participants who noted negative experiences associated them to instances with death and loss in the facility. One participant stated, "In my mind, there are a couple of hardships living in a building like this. One is the frequency of death, and the other is the frequent flyers. The frequent visits from the paramedics and fire station, those are hard ones to live with." Another negative experience was related to downsizing personal belongings. A participant shared, "Having to give up my home and all the stuff that's in it, I mean, I got practically nothing compared to what I had. I went from a 3-bedroom to a 1-bedroom." For research question 2, the question explored was, what strategies do older adults report using to adjust? This question intended to understand what specific activities or tasks help older adults adjust to assisted living environments. Participants shared in great detail aspects of their daily routine they know engage and keep them busy in this new living environment. Most of the strategies participants reported as helpful to their adjustment were conducted inside the facility or outside in the local community. Additionally, many of the participants reported similarities in the strategies they used to adjust. A big strategy noted was engagement in activities. Participants shared involving themselves in new activities the facility offered, such as group or independent activities. Other participants continued participation in activities they were already involved previously before moving. One participant noted, I still go back to Chicago and, travel around the States. I just don't go far. Another shared strategy was engagement with family and friends. Most shared engaging with family and friends in various capacities to sustain and grow their relationships. More often, they included going out for lunches, family or friends visiting, as well as engaging in activities, such as one participant stated that my granddaughters and I talk all the time. They call me every week. For them, the continued support was very vital. Another strategy noted was transportation access. Participants reported the ability to drive themselves to places of their choice, or how owning a car was very important to them. It allowed autonomy and the ability to conduct independent activities on their own, while other participants reported relying on using facility transportation for their needs and noting it was either convenient or challenging. For research question 3, explored is what protective factors enable self-reported adjustment to an assisted living environment. Protective factors can help older adults find resources, supports, or coping strategies that will allow them to adjust effectively. All participants shared during their interview that adjustment was a multi-layered experience based on several factors, such as assisted living community, personal traits, and the type of support they had. For several participants noted that location and the level of service and amenities offered in the assisted living helped them acclimate to their transition. For some, this was in the form of being close to a neighborhood they were familiar with or being near family to enjoy visits. A participant stated, well, my children all live within the area, so they frequently take me out. Personal traits also had a big factor. They were noted by participants to contribute to their adjustment experience. Many participants shared in their interviews having a positive outlook about their move, stating, we just had our heads focused on, we're going to make this work. It kind of helped to have that mindset. It helped a lot. Level of engagement was also very important. It focused on new interests versus previous interests as a trend among participants. Participants noted that moving to assisted living would not limit their previous engagement in activities they had. Other participants noted they stopped some of their activities they engaged in their local community and involved themselves more into the facility offered activities as a result of newfound interest. Type of supports were also noted as vital factors in the adjustment of participants. All participants mentioned having one form of support. The most prevalent forms were family and friends. Participants openly discussed how their support systems helped them sell their homes, pack up their belongings, move to the assisted living, and continue checking in on them even after the transition. One participant stated, I have 3 friends. I can walk in there and it could be like I was just with them yesterday, even if I haven't seen them in ages. We stay in touch regularly. And to conclude, areas for future research. This study resulted that death and loss were an area that could be further explored. Further research is needed in understanding the experience of death and loss that older adults go through as part of living in assisted living and how they can be supported. Older adults were unaware of this and what to expect and the time it takes to process their feelings when they lose a friend. More information is needed on how older adults can prepare for these losses, and a review of what services assisted living can offer to support their residents is needed. Assisted living administration involvement is also very vital. Communities have the opportunity to enhance and improve the programs and services they offer to specifically do more of what participants shared help them adjust. In doing so, the residents' voices will be heard and continual development of programming that meets the resident needs can stay relevant. Lastly, the perspective of families is very vital. It would be of value to gather more information from family members and their experience being an observer looking into the adjustment experience of their loved ones. In particular, assessing what they think are important strategies for positive adjustment. The perspective can be valuable to other families who may be struggling to be a support for their loved ones. More importantly, this perspective can yield overlooked ways to support older adults going through a transitional phase. In closing, the study addressed the adjustment experience, the strategies reported, and protective factors that impact the adjustment experience of older adults. The insights and findings of this study were made possible by the participation of older adults willing to share their stories and experiences. Older adults have shared what works and what helps lead to positive adjustment, which can improve the quality of life in assisted living residents. As the population of older adults continues to increase, relocations may become necessary, and the adjustment experience they go through will become pivotal to their success and well-being in a new environment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Hey.
I can take questions either in the chat box or by raising hand. Donna?
Yeah, this was a great presentation. So I had a couple questions, but one, you on one slide you had mentioned that the challenges being the death and loss of independent. I'm sorry. My question was that a loss from a death or some kind of physical loss, I guess, in a way, versus the loss of independence, transitioning from your own home to this other place? So I just wanted some context about that. And I guess similar to that is, were these folks who decided and chose to move into assisted living communities or had to?
Thanks, Donna. Those are great questions. Yes, the death and loss was related to losing the deaths of neighbors and friends they had established with, who were already sick, had health complexities, and becoming really good friends with new people in an assisted living means that if they're really sick and they have to leave to the hospital, some would never return, or some would just be found unexpectedly dead in the facility at times. And that was really challenging for them to really process and understand. It was unexpected as described by them. And the study or the participants were a bit of a mix. Some chose to go in and wanted to move. There was a couple, for example, who wanted to move in while they were still healthy and young so that they can take advantage of all the amenities offered. Whereas others had no choice. Their homes were not suitable for their needs. They did not require full assistance, but were requiring a little bit more with their ADLs, and family and them thought as well, you know what, it might be time to go where there's more care and assistance as I needed. So it was a little bit of both in that sense.
Julie, you can go next.
Thank you, Erica. This is such an important topic, and we know both from my own working in long-term care for many years and from research that oftentimes the facilities themselves don't talk about the fact that people die, right? Even though everybody knows you don't get out of this life alive, right? If we don't talk about it, then none of our residents will die, right? And so my question for you, Erica, is did you encounter, any of the facilities that you worked with that had an active program for honoring residents when they died, for engaging residents to make sure that they were aware and have some of those traditional goodbye processes for staff? And if so, how were the residents who lived there impacted by death differently than those who resided in the traditional facility that, again, ignore it and it didn't happen?
Yeah, the data I used from participation in a Cal State Long Beach project that was being done. I hopped onto the project when the data was collected, so I did not participate in the interview process. But when I gathered the data, there was not much talk about facilities doing anything. When I did my transcribing and my coding, all of it was really geared towards, we just lost a friend, and that was really challenging. The focus was on that, which I think is why I think for future research, there has to be more in that space, because I'm not quite sure there's much being done. I feel if older adults felt their needs were being met or addressed, it would have been mentioned or highlighted, because that's a pretty big component of a facility. But instead, other areas or other things were focused on, which leads me to believe that there isn't really maybe much being done. And if there is, it's not as notable or highlighted by the participants.
And Erica, I can jump in because I was obviously there for data collection. There was not anything like this at the facilities that this data was collected from that I was told about. So just echoing what Erica said, there was not anything really. And I think that's a great idea that they should have something.
Thank you, Mary. And Erica, just for your edification, if there's additional research you want to read, you might want to look at our colleague, Dr. Michelle Olson. Her dissertation study was in regards to death practices in long-term care. And she also graduated from Concordia University in Chicago.
Thank you.
A few questions are related to, I think, a follow-up in about whether the residents were willing to move or not. So one question is about, did you find that further research is needed on the personality or mindset of the the recipients and the participants, and then whether they're not willing to move. And then also another question related to that was, did you take a look at differences between those who moved into facilities voluntarily or kind of forced to?
Do I have time to answer them, or did you want me to answer on the chat? Not sure where we are in time.
Yeah, you still have time.
Okay. For the research needed on personality and mindset, absolutely. I definitely do think there's a whole study that can be conducted just in understanding various things. I think how does personality of who you are and the type of mindset you have and outlook you have in general in life, and how moving to a new place impacts that. I think I addressed it a little bit, but a whole study of that for sure can definitely be conducted, because it plays a big role on how people adjust when they get there and arrive. In regards to looking at the differences between folks who moved into facilities voluntarily or not, that it was mentioned, and you can kind of scrub through the data and probably gather more information to do something, but I did not want to focus on that because most of the research is focused on people moving voluntary or involuntary and the reasons associated with them moving. So I really wanted to take a different perspective of when they arrived at the facility, what was the adjustment like, regardless of the reasons or factors why they wound up there, and how did they make do with that situation then? So I definitely did want to take a different perspective from that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, I think we all enjoyed the presentation as well. So let's move on to the last presenter, resilience in the Stonewall generation, how experiences over the life force shape aging and resilience in LGBTQ adults 50 and older. Julie?
All right, let's see if we can get this to go right. All right. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Dr. Julie Gates. I'm a gerontologist. I teach at the University of Southern California, Diversity and Aging, and I also work for AARP. I am currently on interim assignment in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion as a senior advisor on LGBTQ. Go.
Julie, to interrupt, you might want to do presentation style.
Thank you. Always so many steps. Let's see if it will.
There you go.
There we go. So there has been significant societal change in the 50 years post-Stonewall that has shaped how LGBTQ people 50 and over experience life and aging. These societal constructs have influenced the process of how LGBT people 50 plus interpret aging well that has not really been addressed in the literature. There's a significant gap in knowledge regarding the process LGBT people 50 plus have employed in their ability to age well. The scientific findings from this quantitative grounded theory study that was conducted with the purpose of understanding and describing how LGBTQ people 50 plus experience the process of aging well in the face of societal adversity are going to be presented here at CCGG to help increase our understanding of the LGBTQ lived experience. Findings from this study illustrate that LGBTQ individuals 50 plus are resilient in the face of significant stressors over the life course. The theory that has emerged from the study identifies the beneficial tactics LGBTQ individuals 50 plus employ to age well, providing insights into these individuals that may provide constructive tactics in the realms of what it takes to age well in the face of discrimination for future research. Practical and policy implications of this research are also considered. The purpose of this qualitative study using constructive grounded theory was to explore again the process of aging well as defined by LGBTQ people 50 plus, and to determine what it means to have an optimal old age over their life course. Again, a constructivist grounded theory approach was utilized because there was no theory that covered the older LGBTQ person who perceives themselves to be aging well and thriving. As such, we needed to understand how the LGBTQ individual experiences the process of aging well in the face of societal adversity, potential family of origin discourse, and discrimination by societal institutions to come to old age believing themselves to be thriving. Go. Okay, so who was the sample? The sample, I utilized a recruitment of participants using Facebook, solicitation via my personal network of LGBTQ individuals and organizations, and then using snowball networking sampling. A potential pool of 20 participants was identified as the initial sample for the study, of which 16 individuals agreed to be interviewed. Each study participant was asked to refer up to 3 additional participants to ensure that no one generational cohort or friendship group is overrepresented. A total of 23 individuals were interviewed for the study, and it was determined that that was an adequate number to answer the questions posed in the purpose statement, and sampling redundancy requirements were met, so sampling was concluded. The participants shared their personal stories, and these individuals shared during their interview process. Some of them answered the questions, of course, expansively, some of them not so much, or not as forthcoming than others. Some shared, certain topics, again, more deeply than others. And because of the uniqueness of each person and their story, the data presented reflects, of course, each person's individual voice and lived experience. The ethnic makeup of the group was predominantly white, but the group also includes representation from the African American Black community, the Asian Pacific Islander community. Participants represented East Coast, West Coast, and Midwest, and our participants predominantly identified themselves as currently middle to upper middle class. There were 10 lesbian females, 10 gay males, a transgender male, a transgender female, and a bisexual female participated in the study. And the participants ranged in age from 53 to 79 years old, with the average, with 64% of the study over 60 years old. Of those who participated, all 19 that were legally married, there were 3 participants who were unmarried, 1 participant is divorced, and 1 is widowed. And there were 2 couples that were interviewed for this study that were married more than 50 years in 2020. So of the 23 people that were interviewed for this study, they shared openly about their lived experience that fell into 3 distinct areas covered, including the coming out process, labeled growing up and becoming myself, financial planning, and social connectedness. Each person's coming out process is different from anyone else's. The majority expressed how they had to overcome the religion and religious dogma of their youth and the guilt associated with it to become themselves, out and proud gay people. They each navigated the heteronormative culture in their own ways to achieve an optimal old age. The study participants expressed the desire to have good mental and physical health, friends and family with them, to be able to travel, and to be able to live independently as they go through the aging process. Many of them expressed that financial preparedness was an undertaking that was similar to their heteronormative peers, but it was also done because they would have no big family inheritance, and they were reliant on their own planning and if partnered with that of their spouse. Social connectedness for each participant was very important. From having a close core group of friends to having their husband or their wife, their stories shared paint a picture of lives well lived, connected to loved ones, preparing for the future, in anticipation of an optimal old age, and the anticipation of spending that life with people that they love. So I share all that to bring to you, of course, a new theory that has emerged. So there were 2 questions that were asked during this theory, during this study. And the first bubbles here answer the questions of how do LGBTQ older adults navigate the dominant culture over the life course to achieve an optimal old age? Research question 1 generated a rich set of data from the 23 individuals interviewed for this study. Each shared their personal experiences with the recognition that they are different from the societal norm and how they coped with that and the resilience that came from it. They shared how they prepared financially for aging, ensuring that they would have the finances that they need to age how and where they want. The third conclusion to the question revolved around the building and maintaining an intentional network of close relationships throughout their aging experience. So we have here the recognition of being different from the dominant culture. And I think it's important for me to point out to you at this point that all of these can be entered at any given time, but all 5 must exist for the individuals who identified themselves as aging well. So the first conclusion of the awareness of being different from the dominant culture includes the participants taking the time they needed as individuals to become grounded in their own identity as LGBTQ people, gaining the internal fortitude to engage in the heteronormative culture as an equal to their heterosexual peers. It also includes the actions of making decisions that align with their personal worldview. The participants shared their stories of how they planned for and engaged in social connectedness. They choose to feel the responses and react to responses of doing self-acceptance work and rejecting the negative and harmful responses of others and embracing their own self-worth. The conclusion that participants in the study took time to become grounded in their own identity and making decisions and choices that aligned with their own worldview in order to achieve a good old age, of course, makes sense with some of the other research literature that is available. We also come to find that these individuals took the time to plan for their own financial security. The second conclusion is, how do these LGBTQ older adults navigate the dominant culture over their life course is that they planned financially. All participants took action to ensure their financial security into and through their retirement by taking advantage of company offered 401ks, pension programs, other employer-based savings plans. All participants live in homes that they own, and we know that that's unique. The 19 participants that are married discuss how they plan together for their retirement, ensuring that the other would receive their financial assets upon death, including their pension, real estate holdings, now Social Security, and investments. Many expressed the core knowledge that they could not rely on familial inheritance to supplement their retirement income, and as such, planned accordingly. And then the third aspect of this initial research question is the whole idea of strong relationships make aging well. The third conclusion is in regards to that, building those friendships with their partners and their friends, and when possible, family of origin, building community, whether it be with their spouse, a circle of friends, a larger social networks. All of these were consistent themes within participants. These friendships gave participants feelings of belonging and connecting, that they expect to see them through their aging experience. The participants focused on the relationships of marriage, groups of friends built over the years, as well as relationships built around sports and leisure as being the ones that sustain them as they age. Many of the participants were able to repair relationships with family of origin that had been fractured during the coming out process. This was often precipitated when the parent or sibling reached out to reestablish connection. And when this occurred, the family often became advocates for and active supporters of the LGBT people, with more than one mother forming a local chapter of the Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, PFLAG, as a way to help themselves and others like them to better understand their LGBTQ children. So these three answers for research question 1 form the first three components of the theory of an optimal old age for the LGBTQ 50+. Now, the second question that was asked was, which promotive and protective factors or processes do LGBTQ older adults employ to construct a resilient identity to attain an optimal old age? Research question 2 provided equally rich data and 2 conclusions of emotional and physical distancing from people and institutions that would diminish them, and seeking social institutions of stability. Each of the 23 participants share how they remove themselves from relationships, families, and institutions that sought to diminish them as individuals, doing so in a way that built their resilience, that made it possible for them to attain an optimal old age. All participants discussed the importance of social institutions of stability are, including the legal recognition of marriage, federal recognition of their relationships, and the ability to benefit from the legal protections that legal marriage provides, even if they themselves were not yet married. These 2 conclusions, of course, are the final 2 components that bring together the theory of an optimal old age. So let's talk just a bit more about protecting myself and from diminishing people and organizations. The fourth conclusion, which promotive and protective factors or processes do LGBT older adults employ to construct a resilient identity to attain an optimal old age, shows that removing themselves from people and relationships that are not affirming do so as a way to protect themselves from the greater culture. The participants disregard those people, institutions, and situations that would diminish them and their identity. This is done by the rejection of those who don't accept them as individuals, by choosing strong supportive friendship networks, developing strong community connections, even in hostile environments, selecting healthcare providers that honor their unique health and identity needs, marrying partners who are affirming and supportive, and leaving the others behind. This does not mean that they isolate themselves from the greater community. All participants were raised in religious households that were considered to be conservative, with 17 being raised Catholic, 2 Baptist, and 1 each Pentecostal, Jewish, Disciples of Christ, and Presbyterian. Each participant turned away from the church of their youth, in part because of their stance on homosexuality, dogma, and the guilt associated with those religions. Of those that continued to attend organized religious services, they turned to more liberal denominations like the Unity Church, Science of Mind Church, and Dignity Church, all of which, Dignity Church, which is the LGBTQ Catholic Church. It was surprising that how many of these individuals started the religion of their youth with Catholicism, and that was not planned.
Thank you, Joey. I hate to cut to, but we have to make sure that we have enough time for Q&A.
Okay.
I'm already getting positive, comments in the chat too. Really appreciating such rich, data, and then I love the way you framed it, and a new theory. That's exciting to see too. So I'll love to take a few questions from participants. Or comments.
Always too much information to share. My apologies. Everyone else did perfect on their timing.
No, you did great. Anyone would like to ask a question?
I just want to acknowledge, I think what Caitlin also said in the chat is we know that there's just not enough research out there about LGBTQ populations, and we know that the disparity is huge as people age. So thanks for focusing on this.
Thank you so much. And it's not published anywhere yet, except for, of course, where do we have to put it when we do our dissertations?
The ProQuest or whatever.
That's right. In ProQuest, I have a bound copy, as does my mother. But it has been literally exactly 1 year since I completed my dissertation, and it's still back here in my mind that I need to do now more with it. And so with depending on what happens with my interim assignment, if I return to my permanent role, that will actually allow me some time to do more writing.
Mhm.
Well, just to follow up on that, I just wanted to say that's like exactly what I've been looking for as a way to teach about this in my psychology of aging class, something that's just so much more empowering and speaks from the voices of the people we're trying to teach about. And so I hope you can get it published. I would love to stay in touch about it.
Yeah, Julie, there's a lot of interest in the chat too. I'd love to use it in your class or love to read it once it's published. So I encourage you to do that too. There's one question, did housing come up, as an issue when you did an interview, or were they all homeowners?
Yes, all of them were homeowners, but their choice of home ownership did vary. Some of them had been in homes that they had been in, for decades, all the way to the point where I had one couple that chose to do the nomad lifestyle, of course, in an RV the size of a school bus. It's a big one. It's not a minivan conversion. But none of them were living in any form of assisted living. So no long-term care facilities, no assisted livings. One I do believe is in a life care community, but there is still in the independent living aspect of that community.
Karen?
Yes, I just want to say, I put this in the chat, but I want to make sure that you hear it, Julie. I just want to really commend you. This is the first time I have felt accurately represented in research, and it is so important because all we read about often is disparity and those poor, lonely people, and that's just not how it is. So superb.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All the feels.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the presentation sessions. Donna, do you want to move on to?
Yes. Yes. I just also made a post that if you haven't seen the documentary Jen Silent, it's a great one to show in class and just really spark discussions and get some of the history about, from some of the pillars in Stonewall movement moving forward. So that's a good one. Okay, so I posted a link to a survey. If we would appreciate if you could take a couple of minutes. I'll post it again because it looks like the chat is so vigorous. Give us some feedback about the showcase today and let us know how we can improve it. And while you're doing that, I'm going to post a poll. We have what we're calling the Best in Showcase. And so you'll see that there are there's the 6 presentations here in order of, sorry, I'm getting some feedback here. Okay, 6 presentations here in the order that they presented. So please select your favorite one that you think should be best in show, and then we'll let you know, and that person will receive a gift certificate. I believe it's an Amazon gift certificate from one of our sponsors, Jesse Archer. So we'll keep that, and while that's rolling, we'll give that a minute or so. If people have some follow-up questions to any of the presentations, we do have a couple of minutes to do that while we're accumulating your responses. So if anybody has any follow-up comments or questions.
Don't forget, we want to announce our CCGG Presents for February.
Yeah, I can put that slide back up whenever you're ready if we want me to show that so people can write down the information.
And yeah, I thought Suzanne, you're going to do a little bit of closing here in a couple of minutes.
Yeah. So we can do that there.
Excellent. Okay, so if you haven't voted yet, please vote. We've got a few more folks that have not yet voted. If you're interested in, cast your vote. There's 2 presentations running for the poll disappeared. Oh, poll ended. Why is it ending? Let me see if I can get it back going for you.
I guess it was timed, so the time just ran out.
You know, it's just such a wonderful day. I'm going to relaunch it, but it's going to clear the existing results. So I know who the current leader is. What do you think? Should I relaunch it again or call it?
Please relaunch it.
Okay, it's relaunched, and answer now, please. If you've answered before, please answer again because those results went away. So all right, there's already more responses. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 5 more seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so we have as our winner, Julie, Resilience in the Stonewall Generation. Yay. So Julie Bates, congratulations.
I think I benefited from being last.
Yes. So what? Yes and no. Who knows? But thank you. So we will be in touch, Julie, with getting you the Best in Showcase Award. And then I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful board member, Suzanne Baumeister.
Well, thank you, everyone. It has been a great experience yet again today. I'd like to thank all of the presenters. You know, this sort of thing really keeps us on our toes. And I think we have COVID to thank a little bit for pushing us into a direction that allows us this connection on such a regular basis. And everybody has wonderful, unique things to bring to us. And so thank you all very much. And thanks to everybody who came. CCGG is looking forward to numerous opportunities moving forward in the future. The most present one coming up to us now in February, actually on February 10th, is our CCGG Presents. And the title is Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. And so, you know, a little bit of a title that's going to hopefully bring people in. But you can see here, we're going to be discussing HIV, AIDS, cannabis, and protecting hearing. It's going to be, I think it's going to be pretty awesome. So please look for more information. Also, starting January, we're going to start our new membership drive. As was mentioned earlier, we're going to be adjusting some of our price points there so that to encourage folks to get involved. And now that we're primarily virtual, in at least for the foreseeable future, it makes sense to us. But so I think that's it. We love to have as many members as possible and to fulfill our mission in a more functional and outreach kind of a way. And so please let us know if there's anything you think we can do to increase our membership and to do some other things that people might find interesting. We are always open and willing to hear your information. So please do look for upcoming information about our events, and thank you very much for coming today.
And I'll just add, yeah, please follow our social media accounts. We did switch up our Instagram. So if you were following our old Instagram, we have a new page just so we could remove it from being attached to a person's page. So please grab that information on the slide as it pops up and follow us on our social media pages as well to stay up to date.
Yeah, and then we're repeating this showcase event in May, on May 5th, I believe, on Thursday. So watch out, for the call for abstracts again. I'd love you to come back in as as participants, and also encouraging your colleagues and then your friends to consider submitting these abstracts next time too.
And I just want to say thank you so much, Amico. With all the technological issues that all of us were having. You stepped in and took care of everything. So thank you so much.
We made it.
So we made it. So thanks for your time. This is such a great opportunity to really kind of hear from the research that's happening and dig in with in conversation with each other and build relationships. So we did plan a half hour if people want to hang out and network and have any questions with for any of the presenters that are still here. If you have any questions about CCGG, we'll a lot of the board will hang out. And so yeah, now is just kind of social time, networking time. If anybody has any questions or thoughts they'd want to share.
Right.
So I love that this year, this fall, we had such a variety of the presentations. Out of the 6 presentations, I think we had 2 from the private sector, 2 student groups, and 2 educators. So it was such a nice balance, but the work was just wonderful to hear about. I love this kind of informal, let's talk with the researcher and see what's happening. So that's been lovely.
Should I just speak up?
Sure.
Yeah, I really want to reiterate what you just said, Donna. And I think that even though we didn't have students across all of the presenters, we did have them who were supporting the researchers. So the students were represented better than we anticipated because the researchers were generous and brought their students' support into the presentation. I want to commend you all for that. I think that's great.
And I have to go pretty soon, but I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to do that. It's a really, I think I put in the survey, it's like a formal yet friendly, first conference kind of experience for students. So it's like the perfect venue to kind of try out this experience. So thank you for offering something like this and really wonderful presentations. It was great to be a part of it. So thank you.
Yeah, but thank you for your presentation too.
Welcome.
Sarah, your program is truly, I think, one that has the potential to positively impact so many people. So I'm hopeful that there are people who are wanting to replicate, the work that you have initiated, and particularly now that we've all learned that you, in fact, can have meaningful relationships over Zoom, that this kind of a program can continue, particularly for the homebound senior. The person who isn't, or who lives in a place that doesn't have a senior center or senior programming, so that they can be connected in that multi-generational way.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And it's encouraging to get those kind of comments because it does take a lot of work, but every time we wrap up a quarter, you just want to do it again because it's making a difference. So, and it is very easy to replicate, I think. So hopefully others will do it too. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Julie, I'm glad you're still on. So I want to ask you, I don't know you or your background. So when did you go to school? Are you help me understand.
Brenda, that is a great question because I wear many hats, and one of the things I'm doing right now is doing a whole age inclusion in the workforce series for business for AARP. So those milestones and life experiences. I first went to school. I graduated from Chico State in 1988 as a recreation therapy major. I was going to change the world with recreation therapy. And then I embarked on when the state decided my 4-year degree in hospital-based internship was the same as a 36-hour course, I had to change. And that's when I really started going more into education and outreach. I was the public information officer for the California Department of Aging and came to work to AARP 20 years ago. And when I started at AARP, I decided, because I didn't need a master's degree, I'd had a very successful career, but I decided I wanted one. So I went back to school and got my master's in gerontology, actually from Oklahoma State, online. And because of that, I got to be a part of CCGG, and I met Maria Henke and many, many others. And because my research has always been LGBTQ aging, she and I had a conversation because I wanted to teach the next generation. And so that's when I started teaching at USC, diversity and aging. And then on my 50th birthday, I decided that I wanted to get a PhD because I really like teaching. I really wanted to do more teaching, and I knew if I was going to teach anymore, I needed to have a PhD. And so the search began for a PhD program, and I'm very open and about who I am. And thankfully, in what felt like 5,000 pages of why you should pick me to be a PhD student at Concordia University in Chicago, they took me, and I started my doctoral journey. And a year ago, when I was scheduled for my final defense, the university president finally figured out there's this lesbian doing research on happy gay people, and oh my God, we can't have this. We just can't have this. He wrote for the Federalist Papers, that tells you who he is. And there was a lot of stuff that went down. But we were able to finally come to an agreement. I had to put a disclaimer in my dissertation research that not only was I speaking for myself, but the university wouldn't claim me for my research. And I graduated. I defended on September 11th in 2020 and graduated last December.
I just want to say congratulations, because I can tell I went to school. I got my master's. I don't have a doctorate. I teach at community college. I'll never be able to teach at university, but I graduated with my master's at 60. So I knew I needed to be employed before I was 60. I couldn't go on for my doctorate at that point. But I think that, and some people may disagree, but we could have a real conversation about it. I think that being older, when you design the research study, gives you so much of an advantage. And I just want to say to the younger researchers that are still on the call that having an older mentor, someone who can also give the insider perspective and not just the academic perspective to inform your choices, or using a focus group before you even dive in deep into your plans, it's such an advantage. It's such an advantage. It really does make a difference. So.
Well, if there's anybody who who is considering, getting, additional education past their bachelor's, one of the things that became painfully clear to me when I did my master's degree is that I actually knew stuff. When I was an undergrad, I didn't know anything. I thought I did, but I didn't know anything. And I was a way better student as an adult than I was. I went to Chico State in the 80s. And I lived the 80s experience at Chico State. So I've evolved and became a much better student the older I got.
Yeah. Oh, I agree.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelly. I haven't heard your voice once today. Can you take yourself off mute and say hello?
Oh, I'm here. I'm here and live in the chat.
Oh, okay.
Is there a way to make it so we can all see each other?
Yeah, go ahead and slide the bar over to the left so that the slide is tiny, or whoever's sharing their screen.
Or we could, stop sharing, I think, the screen.
There we go.
There we are.
Okay.
Great.
So does anybody have an interesting project on the horizon that's upcoming, or something happening at their institution they want to share?
Well, Suzanne and I are moving our program over to the law school. We're pretty excited about that.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
Physically moving it, or internally within the institution?
Well, both. Yeah, both.
It's going to be the College of, we think it's going to be called the College of Governance, Law, and Public Service.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the working title right now, but it's pretty exciting because there's opportunities for innovation. There's we're practically attached to the Ontario Senior Center, and There is some movement on a elder policy and law concentration, and so for as far as this stuff is concerned. And then Kelly and I have a edited. Is that what we're calling it, Kelly? An edited.
Yeah,
volume?
our ethics book. Yes, very excited about that.
Yeah. So.
Ooh, I'm excited to see that and hear about that.
I'm excited to see it too.
Ethics specific to older adults, or?
Yeah, so it's an interdisciplinary look at ethics and aging. And our goal is to kind of give folks who may not be gerontologists or have a background in gerontology, who are sometimes asked to teach these classes, like SOS of aging, psych of aging. So each chapter is focused on a particular discipline, and intended to, not just give all the knowledge and content, but all the tools somebody might need so that we can get it right.
Great.
So,
Great.
yeah, I'm excited about that.
Oh, you already finished the book?
Hey, Amiko, mom just walked by. She said hello.
Oh, say hi back to her too. I'd love to go visit her sometime.
You need to come out here. I'm here every month.
to.
I'm here right now. So yes, definitely come out.
Yeah.
That's why Kelly doesn't have her camera on and
That's
muted,
right.
because Donna is wandering around in the
I'm
background
sure, yeah.
somewhere.
Doing something funny.
I'm starting another daunting project for Augie for the academic program development work group. We're drafting an ageism and ageism-free language best practice guideline that expands on all of it. Goes beyond writing like APA and AMA and AP, but goes into practical application and examples. And it's very daunting because of all everything that goes into producing it, so that it's going to be an OER, so an online educational resource that'll be supported by question banks and PowerPoint. Just really noticing that ageism should be a whole chapter.
Yes.
In every sociology of aging, every psychology of aging book, but there just isn't a unified message about it. And so we're going to develop this and make it an open resource, and really hoping that it will.
Is Augie supporting this? Are they going to be hosting it? Are they going to host it too?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
great.
So it'll be sort of, how the APA has their special document on geropsychology for psychology. So it's like that, only it's really focused on ageism and how it's learned, right? And how we get it, the whole story at a very academic level. So the reason why it's so daunting is all of the citations and resources and references are going to send me through the roof. But yeah.
Well, so then I'll just throw something else on your plate and ask you to write a chapter in our Doom book on the ethics and ageism. You can probably write that in your sleep.
That's one of the things that I'm having trouble with in drafting this, because I'm drafting it and then sending it out to people like I did for AFA for feedback and development and reorganization, the kind of stuff that brings it to a better level of clarity. And the idea of going through those rounds and writing it, as I write it, I'm saying to myself, well, this is just all the same things that I wrote in my presentation for Rising Star and all of this. So I worry about, plagiarizing myself from one presentation to another just because it's in my head.
So, Lorinda, I actually just had, I don't know if anybody knows Sharon Bookbinder. Amiko, I know you know. And they're starting a new program, and she's asked me for any newer definitions of gerontology. So I haven't looked at our stuff lately, so maybe I'll contact you offline and see where we are with that. Because
we need to get on that.
I'd like to have her use, ours.
Yeah. I think that getting that project done would be so helpful, because I haven't resolved my issue here within the district colleges on the other program. They've asked me to get a resolution of support from CCGG, but what we really, but I shouldn't do that before the website that CCG has information on it that, confirms.
Cart
right?
before the horse. Bye,
Yeah,
Alexandra.
yeah. So I kind of put the resolution of support on the back burner until we get that developed. And I think it's going to help a lot of organizations. And I'm actually going on a online tour tomorrow with Gina Schoen from GSA.
Mm-hmm.
She's going to take me to a place where I can see all of the resources that are supposedly on the GSA website that none of us can ever find.
Oh.
And we're going to record it, and I'm going to capture the URLs. And so I will have a better sense of what kind of materials and information are out there around what is gerontology. So I just want to kind of capture it all, and that will help inform what we're working on.
That sounds great. Yeah, well, you'll have to give us the tips and tips, because I can never find anything.
Oh, no, it's terrible. Hey, are you going to be in town in Southern Cal in the 2 weeks before Christmas or a week before Christmas?
Yeah, I should be.
I'm going to stay in touch with you because I might be driving through there on my way to Arizona.
Oh, good, good. Come stay with me.
Do you have a dog?
I do.
Is it a big dog?
It's I don't know, Suzanne, medium dog.
Medium to large size dog.
Is your dog friendly?
Yeah, yes. So we'll chat.
I have a dog who will be on the trip with me. I either have to stay in somebody's home where they're dog friendly dogs, or I have to get a hotel that's dog friendly somewhere.
There's a great dog friendly Casa 425 in Claremont. So yeah, we'll talk.
Oh, good. Because that's about a halfway point for me. I mean, a Belgian Malinois in a car for 14 hours is probably a safe thing.
Yeah, well, we'll figure it out and we'll drink wine.
Oh,
don't forget you're
Maria,
recording.
look who it is. It's Maria.
Oh, hi, Maria.
Don't forget you guys are recording right now.
Oh, we are.
Oh.
We didn't say anything bad.
Yeah, nothing bad.
That's a reminder.
I'm walking in the middle of my street.